Welcome to Talent Unfiltered, located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by HireWorks. HireWorks, talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Gaudier.
It is Monday, July 27th, 2020. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talent Unfiltered, presented by HireWorks. I am Ron Gaudier, coming to you, as usual, from Chicago. It is a pretty day here in Chicago, cooler than it has been recently. I hear we have some rain in our future, but wherever you are, I hope that you are safe, sound, and healthy. Before we get rolling on today's show, I do want to take a minute and just talk about what's going on in our world. I think it's irresponsible not to. Our world feels pretty out of sync. We're battling a pandemic. We have record unemployment. We have a ton of civil unrest. It just feels like we're going through a more tense time than I can remember in my life. Maybe some of this was always underneath the surface. And I don't have any wise words for how to solve your personal problems, your personal issues in this time. What I can say is there are two things I think we need to do. Number one, I think we need to try to be kind to people. Very easy to say, hard to do when you see some of the things that are going on in our society. But I think we need to make an effort to do that, because when you're not kind, it is very hard to have a conversation, and conversation is one of the only ways. Working through this together is one of the only ways we are going to get past it. Secondly, I think we need to take some time to recognize those things that make us similar, not the things that make us different. We're hardwired as human beings to recognize differences in our surroundings, differences in the things that we see. Those are survival mechanisms. But it's how you respond to those things that really matters. So I would say try to be kind, try to find commonality, and let's see if as a nation, as we go forward, we can't try to repair and heal. Maybe that sounds naive to some of you. Maybe it sounds like a lot of kumbaya baloney. But I do believe that it starts with each one of us being responsible, being kind, and trying to find the things that make us the same rather than focusing on the things that make us different. All right, enough soapbox for today. We have a great show coming up for you. Melissa Footlick, who is the CEO of an awesome company here in Chicago called Topstep, will join us. We're going to talk about employee wellness. We're going to talk about the effects that the current climate has had on her company, how they coped, how organizations like hers are part of a movement towards a much different workforce than what we have seen in the past. Now, before we get started, let me remind you that you can connect with the show on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. The show is available on Spotify, on Buzzsprout, and on Soundcloud, and there is also a video version, which some of you are watching right now on YouTube. All you need to do is go to any one of those channels, search Talent Unfiltered, and you will find us. All the links to our social media and everything are in the description section down below. You can also email the show if you like at showinfo@talentunfiltered.com, and keep emails coming to us. We want to hear about topics or guests that you'd like to see us have on, or topics that you'd like to see us cover. As I said, all the links to our social media platforms and everything are in the description section down below, and we hope that you will connect with us. And if you like what we do, then we ask that you would like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice, and turn on the notification button so you don't miss any new content coming from us. All right, let's get to it. So Melissa Footlick is the COO of Topstep. She has a background in talent and recruitment. She is a mentor for future founders. She is a board member for Women Influence Chicago. She's also a Kansas University graduate, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Melissa, welcome to Talent Unfiltered. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ron. Excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. It's I got to meet you the other day through a Hacking HR online event where you were a panelist. I really felt like I connected with some of the messages you were putting out, and I wanted to get this out to the audience because I felt like you guys were taking a very forward-looking approach, not only to the topic of employee wellness and well-being, but also how you were looking at the environment that we live in now. And that's kind of what I want to spend
hmm
our time on today. So a couple of things before we get going. I know you have a very young baby at home.
I
How old?
do. She is almost 6 months old.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yes.
Are you excited?
She's
First?
perfect.
Perfect?
First. Yes,
First.
she is
Okay.
perfect.
Awesome.
Emerson Grace Blake. She is the love of our lives.
Awesome. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I also noticed that you went to Kansas University.
I did. Rock
I
chalk.
yeah, I have to tell you, as a lifelong Mizzou fan,
Oh no.
I almost canceled this interview.
I
Uh,
was gonna say, should we just end this
yeah,
now?
and for those of you out there who don't follow college sports, you have no idea what we're talking about. But I have to tell you, my dad was a member of the Mizzou Quarterbacks Club. He went to the University of Missouri. He passed away in February, and I still have a Columbia jacket that I got him with a Mizzou logo on the back.
Oh, that's
Uh,
so neat.
yeah, and so when I saw that, I thought I'd give you just a little bit of grief. Were you a big sports fan when you were in school?
I mean, obviously, you have
Yeah,
to be if you're going to KU.
for sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
my senior year, we won the national championship and
Hmm.
the Orange Bowl. So definitely a big sports fan. We got
Sure,
robbed this year. COVID, just added to the list of
for
COVID
sure,
things that
for
were
sure.
ruined.
Yeah,
This was going to be our year again.
it's so funny because Mizzou was always a good basketball team when they were in the Big 12, Big
Right.
8 before that.
Yeah, where are you
And
guys at now?
I don't know. I don't know. It's like they're, like I thought it was cool, some of the things that they tried to do, but it just seems to me since Norm Stewart, and here we are talking
hmm
sports, not a sports show, but since Norm Stewart, nobody's really been able to bring the team to a place that I felt like they could just win at any given.
Right.
Football, I thought we were going to get crushed. The first year we got
hmm
absolutely hammered in the SEC, and then win the Eastern Conference or tie co-winners. I forget what it was, co-champions one year and win it the next year, and then now they're getting crushed again. So
Yeah.
anyway, enough sports
Well,
talk
at least we have basketball. We definitely don't have football, but
for sure.
hopefully one day down the road we can bring that rivalry back.
And it's so funny because when you think about pandemic, you don't think about it. I think it's a nice little segue here. You don't really think
hmm
about all the things that it touches.
Right.
I watched one of the NBA games from the bubble last night and what they're doing to
hmm
try to ramp up to playoffs, and to watch the links that Major League Baseball, professional golf, have gone through to try to protect people, but to still give a product
hmm
is impressive. But I don't know about you, but this particular situation has kind of reset my priorities.
For
I've always
sure.
been a sports guy, but I'm kind of like, well, maybe that isn't the most important thing that I'm looking at right now.
Right. Absolutely.
So anyway,
Yeah, it's definitely put what matters most into perspective for a
for
lot of
sure.
people.
For
Yeah.
sure. For sure. Okay, so I can sit here and talk college sports all day long, but I'd like to actually talk about what I brought you here for. So,
Perfect. We can
yeah,
do
so
another segment on this.
exactly. We'll do this another day. We'll start a
Perfect.
separate podcast.
There you go.
You are the chief operating officer for a company called Topstep Trader, and
Yes.
there's so many things that I like about the company that I knew about you guys before the event the other day,
Okay.
because I'm always looking around at the market and what I think trends in hiring, given our business, hiring and talent and how we approach things is critical to
Right.
what we do, right? And I think that there are changes that the pandemic is going to speed up. I think that there are
hmm
things that it's going to push forward in ways that maybe would have taken a little bit longer had we not been
Right.
forced into this situation. So,
hmm
with that in mind, COVID-19 has really changed the paradigm for so many companies,
hmm
new and old, right?
Right.
And I think new and old companies have shuttered their businesses, shuttered their doors. Newer organizations do seem to be more agile in some ways in the
hmm
ability to get their head around working remotely, but
Yes.
less prepared in others. And so, what I want to
Yeah.
get down to, because I think this will be helpful to the other leaders and business owners, small business owners in our audience. How did you and the senior leaders at Topstep plan to navigate the issue? Was it an existing continuity plan that you already had, or were you just responding in real time to what felt right?
Yeah. So I should preface this by saying when the pandemic hit, I was at home with a 1-month-old. And so I relied very heavily on our leadership team to help us navigate this time. So I can talk through, the experiences I've had since being back. And then, of course, like our leadership team did, and we're so blessed that we had such a strong foundation and culture already in place. To answer your question, whether or not we were responding in real time or whether we had a continuity plan in place, it was a little bit of both. Like
And
last year,
that's kind of what I suspected, because I think that's
yes,
been the case for most people.
yes. Last year we actually had a company priority that, I was overseeing around identifying and reducing single points of failure. And so, one of those was, what happens if the internet goes out, or, there's a building fire or something like this, and, our workforce has to go remote. And so, we started to think through that. Obviously, we did not plan for a very abrupt, everybody's working from home for the foreseeable future. However, we had thought through that, and on the people side, and we were able to quickly adjust. We had, some work from home policies already in place, so that was already an opportunity that we provided to our team. That was 1 or 2 days a week. However, we did have the technology to support that. We had the experiences, but we absolutely had never been in a situation where every single person was remote. So for us, we quickly recognized that we needed to adapt what we were doing in person to doing it online. Like, we wanted there to be as little disruption as possible to both the business side and the people side. And so, one of the ways that we did that in supporting our team members during this was immediately we made the commitment that we were going to have at least, one event every single week that would bring our entire team together. It was just such a scary time for people, and people were not accustomed to this social isolation. And we realized that, we need to have something that brings us together, that's uplifting. And so, we quickly implemented, weekly team trainings, things that we were doing previously offline, celebrating babies, doing baby showers. Like, we would do that. We would have company reviews. So we did that at least once a week. And then also, one of the things that has been really effective for us prior to the pandemic, we did daily stand-ups with our team, which has proved even more beneficial in this remote work environment, because you're getting that connection with people, you're talking to people, you're talking through, hey, you're blocking me, or these are my priorities, this is what I need from you, this is what we should expect to be our output for this week. And so having those daily stand-ups has proved really beneficial to not only, team morale and maintaining that connectivity, but also productivity. I will say with the stand-ups, some of the teams, have some more fun with them than others. One of those teams, no surprise, is our marketing department. So if anybody listening is interested in doing stand-ups and making them not the boring yet productive stand-up, our marketing team, they have done theme days. So they'll have like a crazy hair day, or they will have like peace, love, and rock and roll. So yes, so really fun stuff. So those have proved very beneficial. And, I'd also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that our ability to quickly adapt and work in this remote environment so effectively a large part of that was due to the strong culture and the tight-knit family that we already had in place. Thankfully we didn't have cracks in the foundation.
Sure.
And so being able to go into this with an open, transparent, honest, collaborative team has really proved beneficial for us.
It's interesting because I find that so often companies are newer companies, less mature organizations, and I think Topstep's been around for about 8 years now. Newer organizations are. This is the area where they're the most agile, where because of generational issues, I think, is part of it.
Right.
They are able to adapt to that remote environment. But I think that there's the things that you're doing to address being connected even while isolated is
Right.
extremely important. I'd like to jump back into that question for just a second before we move on, though. I'm actually interested in what has hiring been like for you guys, and what are the challenges that you see as it relates to onboarding or getting people, because it's so hard. You just don't have that connection on the front end, right? If you've never been in the office with somebody, and now, unless you're used to working remotely, and you're a remote employee, this is one of those issues that I was saying, it's getting forced to go a direction based on two things. One, current situation, and second, historical response by companies when these kinds of issues come around.
Yes. Without a doubt, it's definitely been challenging. Like I talked about, our team had experience working remote and working from home. However, we had virtually no experience recruiting or onboarding remote employees. We've interviewed some candidates who, might not have been located in Chicago. So we kind of dabbled in that. However, we really had to quickly adjust because we have been very blessed in the fact that along with the pandemic, like our businesses continue to grow. And so we have been able to continue hiring. Granted, in the first month or so, we definitely slowed just because there were so many unknowns about what it would mean to our business. But thankfully, our people team has been able to adapt. I will say though, there's challenges with the onboarding and how quickly people are able to onboard. The amount of knowledge that people get through just sitting next to somebody and being able to ask them a question as it comes up and just learn through osmosis and hearing conversations. It's so beneficial. And so we have been able to hire, we have been able to onboard, but the ramp up time is definitely increased.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up because I hear that from so many people, right? Onboarding is the challenge. It is because getting people, when companies today, when they hire, they tend to, and we're in this business in my company all the time, so we see this a lot. They tend to hire for people. It's changed. There are skills that they absolutely have to have, but there are ones that they're willing to change if the person is, or train if the person is a cultural fit, right?
Yes.
And so with that in mind, when you don't have that connection, and the only connection you have is here, if you're not accustomed to doing this, or you're a shy, slightly introverted person, it can be challenging because onboarding isn't just getting a desk and getting an email address. Those things are kind of sort of,
that's the easy stuff.
That's the easy stuff, right? So, I'm enjoying your perspective on this because I think it will really help our audience members. With that in mind,
let me just add to that. So one of the ways that we have tried to combat that is to pair up each of our new hires with an onboarding buddy. So somebody that is not in their department. And we have set the expectation, like, this person is available for you. Slack, Zoom, whatever you need. Like, there's no silly question. Like, if you are unsure of something, just reach out to that person, because, you know, it can be intimidating, you know, if you're reaching out to your boss, whereas if it's a peer, hopefully people feel a lot more comfortable with that. And then another challenge to your point is newer employees, like younger people that are just now entering the workforce. And what does this remote environment mean for their development, and how quickly are they going to be able to get spun up, because they're not getting that hands-on mentorship and
they don't
consistent
have experience
communication
to bring
and
with them,
feedback.
right? They don't have experience
Exactly.
to bring with them. So
Exactly.
it's tough.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, and, you know, down the road in a few years, we're going to see those young adults not being as advanced professionally that we would have otherwise seen. And that's going to be a challenge.
It's one of those things that I look at all the time. There was a study done recently about generationally how people are responding to COVID, and what they find, and I've said this for those of you who watch the podcast or listen to it on a regular basis, you know that I've said this a lot, but for Melissa, this is going to be brand new. Okay. Gen Xers like myself, we've been socially isolating since the 1980s. This is not a big deal. This doesn't affect me. I have always had a component of remote work in what I've done for most of my career as soon as it became available. What we do see in these studies is that the Zoomers and millennials, and some of they're coming up with new slices of generations now that I can't keep up with all of them, but there's just one in between boomers and Gen X, and there's one in between Gen X and millennials. It's bizarre to me. I was reading something on that the other day. But what we found out is that other generations, particularly millennials and Zoomers, wanted that personal interaction, right? So now you have a situation where they want personal interaction, but they want the freedom to be able to work whenever they want to work, however they want to work, wherever they want to work, right?
Have their cake and eat it too.
Well, it's not, and I'm not blaming anybody. I don't want this to be taken as I'm pointing fingers at anybody, but at some point it would have been, I would have expected the exact opposite. I would have expected people from my generation and back to be the ones that really wanted personal interaction. And what the study said was, man, I'm of a certain age. I've had enough personal interaction. I don't need any more, right? So I'm golden. I'm full.
I'm sick of people.
I'm full on personal interaction. So, so as I mentioned at the top, you were a panelist at a Hacking HR event here in Chicago, which I had the honor of being a part of. It's for those of you in the audience who've never gotten involved or thought about getting involved with Hacking HR, do. It is a phenomenal organization. You can find it online at hackinghr.io. But the event's topic was a new era of employee wellness. And during that, you spoke about how Topstep was addressing this. And you talked about it a little bit at the beginning. But I'd like you to give our audience 2 keys that they can take with them, whatever they're doing, whether they're an individual contributor or whether they are leading a team, in addressing employee wellness. And I'd like you to think about it from the perspective of what we talked about the other day during the event was, I think you're going to have more and more potential gig workers, more and more potential contract employees. How do we include them in this process? So if you could give the audience a couple of ideas on how you guys did it and how you think about this to really keeping people involved, I think it would be helpful.
Ron, you're going to limit me to 2?
Yeah, I am, because at the end of the day, we have a time limit. And
that's fair.
Like you and
I mean, I could talk about it, yes, all day. All right. Well, I appreciate the constraint. So
do you really, though? Do you? I mean, really, when you get down to it, do you really appreciate that? It doesn't. I'm not sure.
So the topic of employee well-being is so important to me. And in fact, our organization, it's one of Topstep's core values. We believe in the well-being of our team. And so I won't go into specific examples of all of these, but there's many dimensions of wellness, as I'm sure you know. The ones that we are really focusing on supporting right now are the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the social well-being. So, you know, if you're going to narrow me to 2, I'll talk about a big one that affects, everything, stress.
Hmm.
Stress obviously impacts your emotional well-being, physical, the way it like manifests in your body, and your mental well-being. And so we recognize, and the data is showing that people, when they are working remote and working from home, they're working longer hours than they ever have before. Because you don't have that commute to break up your workday. I personally can attest to the fact that when I'm working from home, I log on early, I
Hmm.
work all day, I take some time to have dinner and hang out with the baby, and I log back on because, I see my computer sitting at the kitchen table, and I just don't have that time to I don't have that break. And so in order to prevent burnout, because it's just not sustainable. So for our team, in order to prevent burnout, in order to support their well-being, we have decided to test a 4-day work week. If people are working longer hours, they need to have a longer stretch of time to take off, to disconnect, and to just refresh and get reinvigorated for the workday, or excuse me, for the next work week. So that's one that we're really excited about. We're starting the test. We just started it this last week. We're doing we kicked off with a baseline survey to gauge, where people are at in terms of stress, in terms of work-life balance, rating their stress levels, rating their productivity. And then we're going to follow up at the end and see if we've improved those measures. And if we have, or even if they've stayed the same, we're going to look to make this a permanent offering, a permanent policy for our team members.
I think that's really cool. It's a very European model, 4-day work week, 3-day weekend. Uh, One of the things I've always admired about kind of the European approach um, to work and kind of a work-life balance, because that's always been a priority for them,
Mhm.
is that idea of mandated time off, right?
Yes,
You have to go take time off. You have to recharge
right.
your batteries.
Yeah,
Let's move on here for a second, because I got a couple other things I want to get to.
sure.
So, um, i- as we said at the top, it's a really interesting time. It creates situations. It creates things in the workplace and in work in general that we haven't seen before, and we haven't seen them simply because the pandemic changed the way people think about things, right? Like
Mhm.
myself, it took a pandemic for me to figure out I liked avocado, right? And that I needed to and that I needed to work out, right? Like I was
Yeah.
50 something years old, and I had stopped working out 10 years ago, and I'd put
Mhm.
on weight that I didn't need to. And then between my father passing and the pandemic, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm such a nutcase that I went completely the other direction. And now I take like 20 supplements a day, and I don't drink soda, and I do all these things that I believe are going to somehow take away all the bad stuff I did for like 25 years. Um, but it has changed the way that people look at their business. It's changed the way they look at their life. So I want you to put
Mhm.
on your futurist hat here, and I want you to look
Sure.
out 12 to 18 months. Um, what do you expect to change the most in your business, and how do you think you're going to plan for it, how do you're going to
Yeah.
respond to it, and how can other leaders use that forward looking example to thrive in what's definitely going to be a different world when we come back fully?
Mhm. Um, so looking at it from a business perspective, now is a really good time. So we're a fintech company. We're a
Mhm.
growth stage fintech company. We're in the trading space. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a really good time to be in the trading space. There's so much interest and excitement around trading. We're seeing unprecedented volume and volatility. Retail brokerages are opening more accounts than ever before. I just read the other day that, the big three retail brokerages have opened 170% more accounts year over year. And so we compete with brokerages in the sense that we are trying to get people to come to Topstep and learn how to trade in a safe environment before they put their money in a brokerage account. However, given this competition, given the pricing pressures and the consumer expectations, we have recognized that we can no longer continue to do what we've always done if we want to survive. And so we need to add more value for our customers. So for our core product, it can no longer be just this opportunity to get evaluated and earn funding and trade for our prop firm. We have to take care of our customers on a holistic level. Otherwise, we're going to lose them. And the same can be said for our talent, for our people. Like, we have to take care of them on a holistic level, or we're going to lose them. So, to answer your question, to summarize, I think in order for businesses to thrive or survive for that matter, they really need to step back and reevaluate what are the unmet needs and wants of both their customers and their employees. The world has changed so dramatically that the expectations of both of those groups have also changed. So that would be my advice. Like, we can no longer continue doing what we've always done.
There's an old saying, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity. Speaking of insanity, there's a guy that I absolutely love, Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you follow Gary V or not. I would. He is a very interesting guy, and I'm not going to go into his whole history, but he had a post on LinkedIn today, as a matter of fact, talking about leaders and talking about business owners and how they have unreal expectations of their employees, thinking that their employees are going to work as hard as they do when they're not a founder, an owner, a C-suite level person. It's just not, it's not realistic, and it's not sustainable. And then you end up creating all this animosity between leadership and employees because you're not thinking about that person's expectations. And I hate to say it, there was a time when I came into the workforce where you went to a company, you thought, I could retire from here. That's gone. That's gone. The gig economy and the way people work and the way people think about things is changing very, very rapidly. So if you learned nothing else from me today, follow Gary V and renounce your Kansas ties and cheer for a real sports team. So yeah, I knew that wasn't going to go anywhere, but okay, so one of the things that I love about Topstep Trader is the fact that it points people toward, and you talked about it, you kind of hit on it in your last response about expectations and people coming to the platform, but it points people toward the same type of freedom that workplace futurists talk about. And I think, and I mentioned this in the event the other day, I think that this crisis is going to exacerbate and speed up that move towards a gig economy. People had said that remote workers would be the predominant part of the workforce by 2040. I don't think it's going to take that long. And I think it's not going to take that long for two reasons. One, employees are going to find out that this isn't so scary, that being a gig worker is not that scary. And they're going to begin to explore options to have more freedom to live the life that they want to live while still making an income. The second thing is, I think businesses are going to go, I don't need all this space. I don't need all this headcount. There are certain functions that I have to have that are solid core functions, and those are going to be people that are going to be here for the long haul. But there are other functions, whether it's software development or other things like that, that I can literally gig out and reduce my cost and increase my profits. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to share your thoughts on where you think more mature companies need to change their approach to compete in the post-COVID talent race, because there is going to be one. Right now, seems like we have all this unemployment. There's going to be all these people, but at some point, that's going to equalize again, and we're going to have the same people who were unemployed before, probably unemployed. That's a whole nother reskilling, training discussion that we don't have time for right now. But how can more mature companies change what they're doing to be able to compete with companies like you that are cool, young, fun, and can change on a dime in order to go a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. We saw this gig economy really emerge out of the '08 financial crisis. And, here we are in, a different but somewhat similar situation. And I think this is going to be the catalyst for it to become even bigger. I read that Upwork, which, as I'm sure you know, is the largest freelancing platform. They've had a 50% increase in freelancers on the platform. And so, with the high unemployment, with the social distancing requires, like, it is going to have a lasting effect on where and how we work. Like, people always talk about the future of work. Well, the future's now. So people are looking for that flexibility and the freedom and do not want to be chained to a desk and, clock in, clock out. And so in order for these mature businesses to survive and be competitive for talent, they really need to evolve their mindset. Being in an office full time can't be imperative to the success of your business. People are going to be looking for that flexibility. And so you've got to change the expectations of what you expect from people. And, that means redefining and reinventing what work means for this world. And, we're trying to do that through the 4-day work week. We've also announced a permanent work from anywhere policy. It's not work from home. We're now saying you can go anywhere in the world and work as long as you are safe and as long as you are in a place where, you can be productive and get your work done. Like, that's all that's important to us.
That's cool. I'm gonna come work for you because I still work 7 days a week, as is evidenced by some of the conversations that I have with you and others. It's I'm a workaholic, and so I just keep going and I keep going and I keep going, and I find that works for me, but that doesn't work for everybody, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to be sensitive to what other people are actually looking for. So
for sure. Absolutely.
let me ask you this, and this to me is a really um, it's something I don't hear people talking about a great deal. Um, I'm of a belief that when we all begin to come back to work, there are going to be inclusion issues that we haven't even thought about. There are going to be people who have to tell someone, I had COVID and I resolved. How is that person going to be treated by those who didn't have it? How is that person going to be treated by somebody who's in an at-risk population? How do as companies, how do we make people believe that it is safe and okay for all of us to be in the same environment? Secondly, there's a lot of division in our society right now, a lot of tribalism. I don't get into which side people fall on because I think the majority of the echo chamber talks to the fringes. I don't think it actually talks to the people in the middle who want sound fiscal policy and they want socially fair things for people. Having said that, um, how can this current climate and division make real D&I efforts challenging? Do you think it makes them challenging for companies like yours? And if not, why doesn't it make it challenging? That's kind of what I'd like to try to get to here.
Sure. So I've already talked about our core values and so much of how Topstep operates and the decisions that we make, we fall back on our core values. And we have a core value around D&I, and our belief is diverse people and ideas result in better business. And so for us, we are very intentional about our efforts to improve the diversity and ensure that we are an inclusive culture where people feel that they belong and they feel as though they can be their authentic selves and bring their whole self to work. We're blessed that for both our wellness and our we have a do good crew that supports our efforts and core
I
value
like
around
that.
giving back, moves us all forward. We have a D&I committee, and our D&I committee has really done some incredible work. And similar to what I talked about earlier about what we as an organization had to do to adapt to things that we were doing in person, offline, we've
Sure.
had to adapt our D&I efforts to facilitate ensuring that we maintain that value and we are living by it. So our D&I group, when the Black Lives Matter movement really kicked off with the George Floyd catalyst, and there was just so much unrest and sadness in the world. They led us through a roundtable, and we gave everybody the opportunity to talk about how this was affecting us and how we were processing, our emotions, and talk about what we could do to support one another and what we could do to support the entire team and our community. And so, we had a number of things that came out of that conversation. We also we talked a little bit about the hiring practices, but this is something that we have also, been very intentional about. And to your question about does this current climate make D&I efforts impossible? To put it bluntly, no. But again, you have to be intentional and you have to make a priority for it. We had at the beginning of the year, we had a roadmap and we had a plan of, attending a number of different recruiting and career fairs and hosting meetups of diverse groups, like women in tech in our office, in order to build our employer brand and in order to attract diverse candidates. And obviously COVID put the kibosh on those. So, one specific thing, like we have 2 open roles for software engineers, and our director of engineering, we had a meeting and he said, we're getting a lot of applicants. I could definitely make a hire from these applicants, but they're not diverse applicants. And so our executive team made the decision that we're willing to invest in working with a recruiter to ensure that we are seeing diverse candidates.
Sure.
And so again, just being intentional about it and making it a priority, and the leaders at the top, like setting an example and also providing the opportunity for an entire organization to contribute and make a difference.
It's so refreshing to hear companies talk about being intentional
Yeah.
about this. You see changes. You mentioned 2008 before, and 2008 was really a trigger point for a lot of different things.
Right.
A lot of the animosity and things that we feel in our society today were triggered around that time. Some of it was driven by politics. Some of it was driven by the financial crisis. People forget that, millennials' formative time, Gen Z's formative time, comes at a time of turbulence where there is financial crisis, there is civil unrest, and we give millennials a lot of, pardon my French, we give them a lot of shit about stuff that really isn't fair.
Right.
It's there are things generationally that are different, but remember, they laugh at us because we didn't grow up with a phone in our hands, but we laugh because there are things that we've seen. This is my 8th recession. Right? I mean, think about that. I've seen recessions, I've seen wars, I've seen a lot of different things. And so I think when we all stop looking for the things that are different about us and we start looking at the things that are similar, we find ways to be able to relate and to be able to be effective employees and teammates. Melissa, thank you so much. I have really
Thank
enjoyed this
you.
conversation. It's also refreshing. I do have to tell you, I am very, very impressed by the fact that your company intentionally decided to work with recruiters to fill those needs. I think that
Yeah.
that is outstanding. So often in my business, because what we do, we consult to companies like yours, but so often I think people in different parts of our business, especially third-party firms, they get a bad rap. And they get a
Yes.
bad rap because of people misunderstanding all the work that goes into them, finding them in the first place, finding that candidate in the first place. They never see that work. They just
Right.
see, hey, I've got this guy, you love him, great, give me 30 grand, right? Like that's
Right.
that's how they look at it, and it's not near as transactional as people think it is.
Right.
But I applaud you guys for doing that. So anyway,
Thank
Melissa,
you.
thank you so much for joining us today here on Talent
Thank you for
Unfiltered.
having me.
No problem. No problem. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
All right. Bye. Rock Shock.
I can't believe you just said that. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. I hope that you found that to be very beneficial. I know I did. I love the lessons that I learned from Melissa about how her leadership team responded to COVID and the importance that they placed on employee well-being. I also think that there are lessons in there about how to prepare for the next inevitable issue that we will have to deal with as leaders or as individuals. Now, if you like what we did here today, then like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. Don't forget to turn on the notification button so you never miss any new content from us. Join us again next week for another episode of Talent Unfiltered. Until then, stay safe.